Kevin Quinn, thank you so much for joining us on Undistracted. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
I feel like the right question to ask people at the moment is a genuine, sincere, how are you? Because it's been, a wild couple of years. How has that felt in your kind of space so far?
Well, I'm doing all right. And I think it's because, I feel like the world is kind of coming back to normal again.
Mm.
I'm actually back out on the road on tour with the Winter Jam tour. So for me, it really took something like that to put it back in perspective, which is I'm performing live music again. People are gathering in arenas and life isn't quite as uncertain as it once was.
What were your plans before the world got a little bit topsy-turvy?
Yeah. So ironically, I was on the same tour back in 2020 and we had performed 32 of 42 scheduled shows. And then gradually, as news started to spread that this thing was going around, our shows became less and less and less full until eventually we had to cancel the tour. So
Mm.
unfortunately, we missed those last 10 shows. And it was my plan to finish the tour for that time being. I was also actively auditioning for films and TV shows and had a couple pending offers, but Hollywood also shut down. And
Mm.
I was also looking forward to getting back in the studio to record new music that I had written, which unfortunately I didn't get to do. So it's like the whole world was put on hold and everyone was affected, no matter who you were. And the global economy was affected. It was just a tough time for everyone, especially with the loss and the grief that was very unfortunate that people had to deal with. And
Mm.
I ended up saying a lot of prayers as that thing was starting to spread.
Yeah. Do you feel like you lost something in the pause that we've all experienced? Or for you, was it a time where you gained, like as you've said, a bit more perspective?
I think more than anything, I gained. We could argue that we all lost something or all gained something, but me personally and where I was at in life, I do feel like it played out that I ended up gaining. I ended up gaining a lot of time. And I mean that in a way that I gained personal time to figure out how I wanted to spend my time,
Mm.
what was important to me and the things I loved, the people I loved, which ironically is kind of like what It's About Time is about, my new single. But really, it just felt like that. It was like I finally realized, what I had been missing for a couple of years as my career started to really take off.
Mm.
Being able to step back again and realize, wow, like these are the things that are important to me, like the people I love and the things that I'm doing. It felt like I gained that perspective and I gained back the time, which was
Yeah.
really cool.
It's a strange thing to think that doing what you love in acting, in pursuing a musical career and all of that, that it can also be something that takes you from these other things that you enjoy, like family and having this creative time and being able to, I guess, operate more in those sorts of things. Is it strange to think that your career, which is a passion and a thing you enjoy, also interrupts something else that you love as well?
It is. And I don't think I'll ever truly get used to that. I'm someone who very much values home life and love and how we spend our time. So, with a job like this in the entertainment industry where it's not quite 9 to 5 and basically you are the brand and you are the actor that has to show up and be on screen and you are the singer that has to put your voice into the mic on a song. In a way, it kind of feels like those two worlds can get intertwined and that your
Mm.
personal life can become your career or your career become your personal life. And I'm not crazy about that. I feel like there's a way to still have a successful career and still have a successful home life without having to sacrifice the other.
Mm.
And with me just being somewhat of an emotionally aware person myself, I've seen that happen to some of my, friends or colleagues that I've worked with. And I've seen it happen to myself. And again, like it was kind of the pandemic that, where I was able to step back and realize that yet again.
Mm.
But it kind of changed the tone for how I approach my work going forward. I try to treat it like a 9 to 5, so if I have obligations, I try to get it done in that kind of mentality so that I am able to make time and space for the people I love. That's what's
Mm.
most important to me.
Do you feel like putting boundaries around the work that you're doing, making it a 9 to 5 as much as you can with something like the entertainment industry, does that have an impact on the level of success you feel like you can have in it? Like, are boundaries respected in that industry?
That's a good question. Yes and no, because I'd like to believe that the answer is no, that, you can still have a successful career and be just as busy and working without having to sacrifice your personal life. But I think the reality is that a lot of people who get to a certain point end up having to do that without choice, really.
Mm.
So at that point, it's really, how are you balancing it, and how are you making a conscious effort to sort of defy the fact of the matter, which is that it's going to take up your time.
Mm.
That's what I've had to deal with.
Yeah, so I suppose then you've got to have like a real reason to want to do the work, to, be on screen, be creating different stories in different forms. What is it for you that makes it worth showing up to work and being able to do the work that you do?
For me, it's always remembering why I am doing it in the first place, why I fell into it. And also to remember that there's a lot of people who would love to be doing what I'm doing and being in my position. So if I take that for granted, or, somehow start thinking that it's no longer worth my time, then, shame on me, because there are a lot of people who would love to be in that position. So that's kind of how I've approached the matter.
And you started early on at 15 auditioning for Australian Idol. American Idol rather. It's gone around the
Yeah.
world. It's a big thing to be doing at such a young age. So what were your expectations back then?
That's the thing. I didn't have expectations. And I think that's what ironically got me to as far as I did on that show. I was just a 15-year-old kid who knew he loved singing and was passionate about it, and decided to submit a video. And ironically, a producer reached out and said, you should come on the show. But I was just kind of naive at that point, and there were no stakes in it for me,
Mm.
which ironically also has kind of served as a parallel to how I treat my career still to this day, which is, it's just something that kind of worked out, and yeah, it's strange. I can't really explain it, but if there's no stakes, and you never really have a definitive point from when it becomes hobby to career,
Mm.
then you're not putting as much pressure on yourself. I guess that's the best way I would explain it.
Yeah, so even though you've gotten a little bit older now, you have a few more projects under your belt. You don't feel like there's too much at stake and you don't need to take it too seriously?
I don't. And part of that is just because I fell into it. I feel like the path was kind of laid out before me, and
Mm.
orchestrated, not by me. There was never really that definitive point where, okay, I have to start treating this like a career. It just kept working out and further, and I became deeper and deeper in it.
Yeah.
That really, I couldn't tell you when my career started.
Mm.
But American Idol ironically led to an acting career before it led to a singing career. And I don't know if that was just because it was being in front of the cameras, but I was just kind of rolling with the punches, and
Mm.
for some reason I was supposed to be an actor. And then being able to circle back and come back to my first love of music was
Mm.
just the icing on the cake, that I found out I really can do both. They're just different mediums and different forms of creative expression, but they're
Mm.
both equally fulfilling to me.
And it was a pretty significant acting opportunity that you got to go from that audition. A couple of years later, you end up playing Xander on the Disney series Bunk'd. How do you become a Disney star? Because it seems like something only a very, select group of people end up doing with their lives.
It is kind of like a club. I hate to say it, and it's a very small community that once you're in, and everyone kind of it knows each other. But for me, it really was just that one audition that I had when I first got to LA, and it was for this Disney Channel original movie, and I ended up getting the part. And I went on set, and they started seeing my tapes, and they said, "Hey, we have this new show called Summer Camp. Do you want to audition for it?" And I said, "Sure." So I flew back to LA and auditioned for this role of Xander, and I guess I was just the right one for the part.
Mm.
I've been told that they audition a few thousand people. So I guess one way you can get into the club is have a knockout audition, because there's a lot of competition. But I'm lucky to have been able to play that role, and
Mm.
and to have led to a career in music. And now I get to make my own music, no longer just
Yeah.
singing the song, which kind of worked out.
Yeah, it's so true. And the moment you do something Disney, I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this. People are going to compare you to like a young Zac Efron, right? It's like the sort of 10 years prior to what he's kind of doing now. Do you kind of feel that? Has someone said it to you before?
Yeah, it's par for the course. I almost wish I didn't look so much like him. I don't know why I do, but yeah, I mean, probably this is kind of crazy, but realistically, once a week, if I'm out in public in a place that I haven't been to before, or they don't know me, I'll get it. You know, you look like Zac Efron when I'm
Mm.
checking out at 7-Eleven or something. And then they ask me, have you gotten that before? I say, hundreds of times for
You're
the
like,
past
yes.
6 or 7 years.
Oh my gosh. Have you actually ever met?
I haven't met him. No. I mean, I hear he lives in the neighborhood, but no, I haven't met him. Seems like a
Yeah.
great guy, though.
Yeah, we'll do our best to yeah, get you guys together, take a photo, then the fans can hopefully just leave it in the
There you go.
past. But when you wrapped up Bunk'd, you'd been on it for a couple of years. What were you looking for after that experience had finished?
I was definitely setting myself up to pursue a career in music. So a lot of people don't know, but when the cameras weren't rolling on Bunk'd, I was actually in the studio recording and writing music and just developing my skills as a songwriter. And I can tell you the first songs that I wrote were not very good. Um, but I probably took 4 years to develop my songwriting before I actually started sending songs to labels and
Mm,
sending. And at that point, Capital was able to see, what I was trying to do, and they were the perfect partners to bring on board. And I'm lucky to have them because they worked so hard for me. So it was definitely setting up a music career, and I knew that post Disney, I was going to pursue a music career,
yeah.
and it was also being able to do something a little bit edgier. Because Disney is pretty clean, and not to say that I want to do something totally explicit and dirty. No. But being able to dive into some harder subjects with
Mm,
characters, or edgier projects that tackle a more mature subject matter, that was
mm.
something I was looking forward to. So when Disney ended, and I was able to finally do that, I was only able to do it to a certain capacity because I was still only 19 or 20, and
Mm.
at that point, there aren't any really 20-year-olds leading the next Martin Scorsese film. But with a week away, you know what I mean? With a
Mm.
week away and a couple other projects post Disney, I was kind of able to satisfy a more uh, edgy itch for my
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, with a week away, I want to talk to you a little bit about your experiences in that. But I got to ask you, first of all, like, I love a good musical, but I always think one of the most awkward things has to be when you're standing across from someone singing into their face. Like, is it really awkward or is it just work?
It's work. Yeah, the awkwardness gets taken out of it when you realize that there are 40 crew members looking directly at you and cameras pointing at you.
Mm.
So I think any professional is going to treat it as work. So as much as it may seem awkward, it is to an extent, but it's also just work.
Yeah, I think it takes a real gift to make it look just natural and normal and fun on screen. But A Week Away was the first faith project that you decided to do. Why were you ready or interested in that kind of opportunity?
I I liked the thought of doing something I had never done before. I think any actor or musician will tell you the same thing. And for me, a faith-based musical definitely satisfied that itch. I was like, I don't know when my next faith-based musical is going to come along. This project seems like an anomaly that I have to do. So it was kind of this intrigue that I had with the idea that led me to reading the script, taking the audition, and then on top of that, just realizing what a unique character it was.
Mm.
And Will Hawkins' character that we see on screen was going through a lot of the stuff that I felt I was going through as Kevin Quinn, which is why I felt the role was so timely and why I was able to play it that way. Because I was really just pulling from my own life and some of the stuff that I was dealing with and putting it on screen.
Mm. It was Blessing. A real time reflection, essentially, of something that you've spoken about before in other interviews where you were having this existential crisis of a sort, really working out your own faith. Before you did that movie, where was your faith at?
Not where it is now, I can tell you that. I had a lot of questions that spawned just from me coming of age and especially coming to terms with my own mortality. And it took me losing a couple friends along the way to realize that I didn't know anything. I didn't really know anything about my existence or my purpose or why I was here. So I tried to find answers like any, curious, normal human being does, which is what a lot of Christianity is centered around, which is, this life and the next. And I just found that all the answers I was looking for and that I felt I needed to hear were in the Bible. And that I don't know if that's the case for most people, but it was for me. It was just it was like everything was laid out to me so clearly, and I realized that this life is a blessing and a miracle, and it should be treated that way. Which also that kind of journey of rediscovering my faith and some of those ideas made it their way into the EP. So if is wondering where those ideas spawned from, it's from the journey of rediscovering my own faith that they came.
What were some of the questions that you were asking that made you curious to even think, is God here with me in this? Is there something bigger for me? What were some of those questions for you?
What happens after we die was a big one, especially when people I knew started to pass away. Let's see. I mean, I was asking myself, at the time of quite the uncertainty, if there is a God, then what is he doing with my life? What does he look like? What does he want from me? And the idea that I always came back to that satisfied the answers for those deep questions and really encompassed any question and kept leading back to the same idea, whether it was the reason for my existence, my purpose, what God wanted from me. And that idea was love. And in Christianity, we all know that God is love. And it is, for me, that was all the proof I needed, which is love is the purpose of our existence. Love is what God wants from you. Love is what you should want from him, but you're already getting it, whether you know it or not. So the idea of love, I don't know. It felt like something turned in me, like something holy turned in my heart. Call it the Holy Spirit, if you will. But I just felt like having that answer gave me peace with some of the more difficult questions, like what happens after we die. I don't think anyone will ever know, and it's not comprehensible, but it has something to do with love. I do believe that, and that was enough for me.
And when you found that sense of peace and that answer, how did that then change the way that you approach the work that you do and even your writing, which we'll talk about the EP as well and some of what's included in that. But as that personal shift happened, what then did it do for you as you looked at the things that were then, on your calendar and in life ahead of you?
I made a lot of changes in my life. Some of them were easy. Some of them were really difficult. But I'm lucky to be able to say that those changes were all positive, good changes that have led me to both become a better human and live a better life. But I made a lot of changes about things that, weren't necessarily easy. I started to center my life around love, and especially the idea that if I die tomorrow, what am I leaving behind? What foundation do I have? What have I created and left? What impact have I left on the world? Or, how will people view me? Did I share enough with the world? Did I spread enough love? Did I, we don't think about those things when we don't have a reason to, because again, we tend to take this life for granted when we're in a routine and don't have to think about it. But if we actively and make a conscious effort to think about those things when we don't have to, I believe that leads to the change and the blessings and the beauty that life truly is. So that helped me kind of become a better person. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. It's the truth.
Well, it's the goal for all of us, I think. I would hope to improve ourselves and to contribute to our world in a positive way. And there's certainly a sense that you need to be intentional about that and make choices to really hone that in your own life. And if you are thinking about, for you personally, the day hopefully way down the track when, you do pass away, what kind of message or what kind of feeling would you like to have left with everybody?
That's a great question. The day that I pass away, was I good to you? You know, and I think that extends beyond just family, friends, loved ones.
Mm,
Uh, God is good, and God treats us good, and with a good heart. And we are all made in the image of God. And I feel like it is our responsibility to do good, um, and be good towards our
mm,
neighbor. And so often it's easy to, feel bitter or resentful or mean spirited about something. But we don't have to do that. Love is a choice. And I think that's what I would leave with them. If I were gone tomorrow and that were my message, I'd say, uh, like, be good to people that you think, you can't be good to,
mm.
because let bygones be bygones. Don't let resentment or anger take over you, because they're just going to eat away at you at the end of the day.
Mm. I think we all have moments where, while that way may be our goal, we also stuff up and we get it wrong and we realize that we have done something that's not good or not kind to somebody else. In your own life, what do you do in those times where you realize I've failed, I haven't actually done a good job?
Self-reflection, a lot of self-reflection. I'm a really emotionally aware person and overly analytical, which I sometimes wish I wasn't.
Mm,
But a lot of that I get through prayer too. Like, if I have done something, or realize that I've done something, or maybe I didn't realize I did something, but then when I pray about it and talk about it to God later on, that's when I realize, oh wow, I should have done this differently.
mm,
So it's a conversation that I have, of course, through prayer. Uh, but that's kind of been the way that I handle it, which is, actively making the change and recognizing my own patterns and behaviors,
mm.
so that I can implement them going forward.
Yeah. And you're clearly a deep thinker, and I think long term fans of you will already know that. But when you've had a history or a career that starts as a Disney star, and then you do also have this depth, you're a real human as well. Is that ever a difficulty for you, the tension between being, shiny, wholesome, and Disney, and also actually just human?
Of course. I mean, of course. But I think what the fans will see, with who I am, as they get to know me better, or what they will hear in my music, is that this is who I am. This is my truth, and this is the music that I have been wanting to make for so long. That is the best representation and reflection of who I am.
Hmm.
um, I'm not going to preach to the choir about, of how faith is, all these things, but the truth is that it has, and it is a big part of my life, and it's up to them to take their own faith journey. But I just wanted, as a creative choice, to put that in my music, because it's a big
Mm,
part of who I am. And what they can walk away with is up to them,
mm.
but yeah, I think that's how I would answer that.
Hmm. Were you ever nervous to include your faith and your Christianity in the work that you do? Because I know for some artists, it is something that they want to keep separate, and they don't necessarily want their brand to be connected to their faith, for better or worse.
No, I think I had enough creative control and enough of a voice and enough of an awareness of who I am, uh, that I wasn't worried about that. I feel I can be Kevin Quinn and still share these kinds of messages,
Hmm.
because again, it's just who I am. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
And so, in talking of this EP, then the first track, "It's About Time," it's really fun. I loved it. It is, this kind of this message, this song about really using the time we have with intention. Why did you want to start with that single?
Because it was the perfect representation of all these ideas that we've been talking about, and that were bubbling up in my life at the time, that I wanted fans to hear first.
Hmm.
Of course, they heard Wildfire, and that was the debut, but It's About Time felt like the message that I wanted them to walk away with, because that's the basis of not only the album, but the themes in the EP.
Hmm.
If they can understand that life is about time, then they can understand the importance of some of those other songs as well. So for me, it feels like a very cohesive project, because
Hmm.
all the songs are kind of speaking to each other in that way around a common theme. Like, look at I'm Still Breathing. For me, that song is like, if you were knocking on death's door, then, but you somehow are still here. I mean, you got to understand that life is about time before you cross that bridge and understand that, like, that last breath. It's a heavy subject, but also on the production side, the fact that we were able to make it as fun, as energetic, as youthful as it felt like we did our job well.
Yeah, well, if people watch the video, and I encourage everyone to do it because it is quite a lot of fun, there's a nod to the Breakfast Club. There's all of that kind of high school energy in there too. The Breakfast Club is a favorite of yours. Why do you love it so much?
I love The Breakfast Club because that's another movie about coming to terms with, your own mortality or coming of age. And I love that that we're seeing that with such young characters, because it's almost as if what is being implied is that they're experiencing this for the first time. And the first time that you ever, come of age, or it's like everyone comes of age and everyone has that universal experience, but you only start that journey for the first time once. So for us to be able to see it on screen in that film, I think is why I love it so much. Because it's funny, the way I explain it to people is, as a kid, I was looking up to these characters as if they were older and experiencing something adult-like that I hadn't yet experienced it. And 15, 17 years later from when I first saw the film, I watched it as a 24-year-old and look at that as the past, but still have just as much of an affinity to it, that I've already gone through that. So my perspective has completely changed. And, I see those characters as young now because I'm well beyond their age. So for me, that's the definition of timeless. And those are the kind of messages that stick with you and that are worth telling. And I felt like if I could condense that into a 3.5-minute music video and still get the same ideas across, then I feel like people would really be able to relate to that.
And what I like about your EP and the songs that you've written with the title track, with I'm Still Breathing, all of them, you are like, you're still young, but you're old enough to have gone through some stuff that in writing about these experiences, you're being honest. There's an authenticity to it. You're not talking about or singing about hardship that you've never experienced. You've confronted it. It's a weird thing though, to talk about maybe loss of life and going through difficult things, coming out the other side early in life. But do you think there's a benefit to dealing with those maybe heavy subjects early in the way that it then impacts the rest of your life? Or is it better to leave these things to later, to when you're older, more mature?
I as someone who, I'll give you an example. When I was 16, I lost a friend who was hit. I lost a friend to a drunk driver. And that was really difficult for me. And I didn't have the capacity and literally the brain chemistry to be able to process it in a mature way. When I was informed about her death, the first thing I did when I got home from school was kind of instinctively brush it off and then assume that she would be coming back. And it took a couple of years for me to realize that she wasn't coming back. So I think that there's only so much of a capacity that the human brain can process certain emotions, especially that young. But if you do experience them, then if they happen again, you end up processing them all over again and realizing them all over again. So I wouldn't want anyone to have to deal with such heavy things like that so young. And it might actually be better, in my opinion, for them to experience them when they have the adult brain to handle it. But I don't think it's necessarily a disadvantage either, because the kids who walk away with having experienced those kind of things at a young age, I would assume have a better grasp of life and meaning and asking themselves the deep questions than the kids who unfortunately, I guess fortunately didn't experience that.
Yeah.
So I'm conflicted about that,
Yeah, and I think it's something that people would work out from their own experiences. Like, we don't get to choose when the hard stuff comes. We just have to choose how we get through it.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe everything happens for a reason. And, there are certain things in my past that I wish didn't have to happen. And that were really difficult for me. Not just deaths. Like I had to make some really big changes in my life too, because, we've all made mistakes and have regrets. And I felt that there were certain things I was doing or ways that I was living life that just weren't sustainable. And it took me having hard, difficult conversations with myself to realize that, I have to change something going forward. But that kind of circles back to the idea that I was talking about, which is that that's the one thing you can't control is change. And there's something beautiful about that.
Where does your family fit into all of this for you? Because you've got, a twin sister, Courtney, who, from the looks of it, seems like a great friend, your siblings that actually get along. And years ago, your parents kind of moved to follow your career and really support you in that. Where do they fit in your life? How do they kind of play into these beliefs that you've been sharing with us about?
I have a very tight-knit family, and they've kept me grounded and humble, even as my career progresses. I see them all the time. They do live in Los Angeles. Yes. About a 45-minute drive from me. This should tell you how close we are. Before this interview, I got back from babysitting their cat. Yeah. So, and Courtney is a publicist for Lionsgate Studios in Santa Monica, California. So she kind of gets the whole industry and is very much involved with it as well. And it's nice that we can relate and have, stuff to talk about on that front. But through it all, my family fits into my life in a way that nothing else does. They hold their own unique position in the level of importance of the things in my life. I also have my girlfriend, Kelby, who I've been dating for 2.5 years now. And she occupies that same level, she is family to me. We're not married, but
Maybe one day, you never know. Is this the interview where you share the news?
Yeah, I not quite yet, Kelbs. I'm not popping the question yet if she hears this, but she's well aware of that. But she means the most to me as well.
And she's done this journey with you. Even if it is for only 2.5 years, some of what you've gone through, because you guys met on the set of A Week Away, where you've had this real faith experience that we've spoken about, and then obviously you've made these changes since. How has she felt? Or I know this is you putting words into her mouth potentially, but what's that been like for the two of you together with changes happening in your life alongside what she's got going on in her own?
I just feel like she's part of me. Like she's the 50% of me that was missing. And we did meet on set of A Week Away. She was a dancer in the film. And like I said, I was kind of going through this journey of rediscovering my faith. And A Week Away came into my life at the perfect time. And it was just something that felt so serendipitous and like it was part of something bigger. So when I met Kelby and started, feeling as though me meeting her was something bigger and that it was also part of what was playing out in my life at that time, that bled into our relationship as well. And it gave us a really solid friendship and foundation. And a lot of our relationship is centered around our faith. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
So how does someone fall in love on a film set? Is this like over tacos at the food truck? Like, because you guys don't share a scene together from the audience perspective. I know she's there dancing in the background, but it wasn't like you were scene partners or anything.
I think we were friends. We weren't quite scene partners, no. But we were friends and we just started talking and developing that friendship. And we had one night on an off day where I was staying at the hotel that we were being put up at, and we went into town with some of our crew and cast, and we just all had dinner, and then we came back to my hotel, and I ended up playing the guitar for her, and I just was myself, and we just had this amazing 3-hour conversation till 5 a.m. That I had never experienced before with another human being. So I knew that this was something important, and that I was, opening up my heart to this person, and he was in turn opening up hers to me. And we spoke about things that you wouldn't necessarily speak with someone on a first hangout, if you will. Because again, we were just friends hanging out. But she opened up about things that she had been through. I opened up about things that I had been through. And through it all, it gave us a very vulnerable understanding of each other from the get-go. We're able to build a really beautiful relationship off of
Yeah.
that.
That's so sweet. And this is why guys learn the guitar 100%.
I hate to say that I would, like play the guitar but I wanted to for her because music is such a big part of my life. And, I feel like I'm my most authentic self when I have that guitar in my hand or the mic in my hand. And some things just can't be expressed with words. So, in an attempt to talk to someone I really respected and wanted to get to know better, I just spoke it with music instead. I
Yeah,
guess.
well, it sounds like you're in a really great place in life, and you've given us so much, Kevin, between what you've shared today and what you're bringing in your EP. It's about time as well. Thank you so much for joining us on Undistracted. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and supporting my music and the deep conversations. It means a lot to me.